Means it is time to go. So, welcome everybody to the special meeting, March 9th of the Management Committee. Just to remind everybody, the Metropolitan Council Chair has determined it is not practical or prudent to conduct in-person meetings in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Accordingly, committee members will participate in this meeting via telephone or interactive technology, and the meeting will be conducted under Minnesota statutes, section 13D.021, at the date and time stated earlier. We encourage you to monitor the meeting remotely, and if you do have comments, we encourage members of the public to email us at public.info@metc.state.mn.us, and we will respond to your comments in a timely manner. So with that, I will call the meeting to order. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. And next on the agenda is our approval of the agenda. And unless there are any changes or additions to the agenda.
Councilmember Johnson, I pardon the interruption. We need to do a roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry, attendance. I always forget that. I got to put that on here. Thanks, Lori, for keeping me in check. Let's do roll call.
Barber.
Here.
Gonzalez.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Lilligren.
Here.
Will be late. And Pacheco. Hasn't joined yet. And Johnson.
Here.
Thank you.
So now we can move on to approval of the agenda. So are there any additions or edits, changes to the agenda from committee members? Right, then seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. Everybody should have received a copy of the draft minutes from our February 23rd, 22 special meeting of the Management Committee. Is there a motion to approve?
Lilligren moves approval.
Moved by Lilligren. Do we have a second?
Second by Barber.
Seconded by Barber. Is there any discussion on this item? All right, then seeing none, let's do roll call vote.
Barber. Barber.
Aye.
There you are. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Johnson.
And aye. Thank you for that. Now we'll move on to the business portion of our agenda. Our first item is 2022-62. It's a joint business item. This is going to be going to transportation as well. It's the Green Line extension discussion that we'll be having, and I will turn this over to Stuart McMullen.
Afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Stuart McMullen, Director of Budget and Operations here at the Council, and I'm bringing forward the Metro Green Line Extension 2022 Unified Budget Amendment. I'm quickly going to turn it over first to Nick Thompson, then Ed Petrie of Metro Transit to walk you through the amendment in more detail. At the conclusion of their presentation and any questions, the motion will be that the Metropolitan Council authorizes the 2022 Unified Budget as amended and in accordance with the attached tables. And with that introduction, I'll just turn it over to Nick.
Thank you, Stuart, and Madam Chair and council members. For the record, Nick Thompson, Deputy General Manager of Capital Programs at Metro Transit. A little bit of background before Ed describes the budget amendment. So a few weeks ago, we were before the full council describing the update to the Southwest LRT or Green Line Extension project, an indication of a settlement agreement that we would be reaching with the civil contractor that would result in extension of time for the project, the 34-month extension to the civil construction project, and then a further additional time to the project that will push our revenue service or opening day of the project to 2027. Within that overview that we provided and in that business action, we also indicated that there would be additional funding needed due to the issues that the project has encountered, both from, we highlighted several of the key issues that have driven the cost to the project higher, but also the extension of time, adding to some of the project costs. At that time, we indicated that we estimated the project would need, I think between 450 and 500 million dollars additional funding over what was available. And at the time we said we were working with our state funding partners, both federal and local. Hennepin County is the funding partner, to identify areas to fill that funding gap. So today is bringing forward some additional, essentially federal funding into the project through some mechanisms that is like step one in filling this. So this is a following up from our action. This is moving forward to finding funding solutions to that additional funding for the project. So we will be describing today this portion that we still have not. We're still working with our funding partners on the remainder of the funding need that is created with the extension and the complications the project has faced. But this is an important first step to resolving the funding need for this project. So with that, I will turn it over to Ed, and I also will be available for questions after Ed completes his presentation.
Okay, good afternoon, Chair Committee members. Ed Petrie, Metro Transit. I'm Director of Finance. Can you hear me? Great, thank you very much. Lori, can you go to the next slide? So I'm going to have some opening remarks, Chair, and then we have the business item, but I prepared a slide here. I thought it might be easier to kind of walk the numbers. It's very confusing. And it's very confusing where the numbers are going, but I thought it'd be easy just to walk them down one piece at a time so we can digest them and go down. So first of all, as Nick and Stuart mentioned earlier, this is a capital amendment for the Southwest of Metro Green Line extension. This amendment, as discussed, as Nick mentioned, is part of the larger solution for the Metro Green Line budget increase that he discussed. The balance of the solution is being worked on right now with the funding partner and will be brought forward in a future amendment. As part of this Southwest funding solution and the budget amendment this evening, we're asking the council to become a funder within the Southwest Light Rail project. As part of the solution being worked out with the county, the funding portion by the council would be $50 million in federal formula funds. As when we mentioned, this amendment will be programming $50 million of 5307 formula funds to the to the Southwest line. I did want to bring to the board's attention, though, and the committee's attention, that we did have a past practice of doing this back in, I think it was 2003. With the building of the Hiawatha Metro Blue Line, the original line was going to stop at the 28th Avenue station. We decided then, working with the Mall of America and with partners, we actually extended it then to the Mall of America. That Mall of America extension, we received the approval from the FTA, but it was a $38 million extension, of which the council participated in that extension with $30 million of federal 5307 formula funds. So we use the same type of funding on the Hiawatha Blue Line as is being recommended this evening for the Southwest Line, 5307 money. The other portion of the amendment that we'll talk about this evening is based on a very favorable forecast that we received with motor vehicle sales tax. As you are aware, we received forecasted funding from the state of Minnesota both in February and November. And when our November forecast came in November of 2021, the forecast was very strong and much higher than what we had anticipated. When we received the February forecast now, it still held and was as strong as it was in November. So as a result of the favorable invest dollars, that allows us to make some adjustments that we'll talk about this evening. Also, as you're aware, we'll also be receiving federal 5307 formula funds as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law that the president signed earlier this year. We anticipate receiving funding from that infrastructure law in the form of 5307 formula funds, well in excess of the $40 million. We're still waiting to find out what the exact amounts are, but if and when we get the federal bipartisan infrastructure funds, we'll consider bringing in a future capital amendment back to the council, which would then bring the 5307 funds back into our federal program, into our capital program, with the anticipation of pushing the invest funds back up into operating, where they originated. So with that, Madam Chair, if you're okay, I will then start going through piece by piece on the chart.
That would be great. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. Okay, the first piece is the first line is called
Madam Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt. Madam Chair,
Councilmember Lilligren.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and very sorry to interrupt the presentation. I'm just getting text messages, and I guess this was arranged before this committee meeting, that I was expected to be in a briefing with the Minneapolis City Council members on the Blue Line extension. And so I guess that was cleared in advance, and I just want to make sure that if I leave this meeting to attend that briefing, I'm not leaving us short of quorum. Oh, I see John's here too, Councilmember Pacheco. So,
Lori, we would have quorum if Councilmember Lilligren needed to step off.
Correct. We will.
okay, I'm going to do that. I'll rejoin if I'm able. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Councilmember Lilligren.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay, let's proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, the first line is talking about transit debt service. First of all, this amendment will transfer $10 million out of the transit debt service fund and into the Metro Transit CIP. Debt service dollars are originated from the transit bond issuances that have matured and are available for the capital program. By statute, the council levies for 100% of the anticipated debt service needed, and any funds remaining over the levy are available for such purposes as debt retirement, arbitrage, or transfer to the capital program. So there is a balance in the transit debt service fund in excess of $10 million, and one of the eligible uses of that would be for transferring to the capital program. So with that, this would be moving $10 million from the transit debt service into the Metro Transit CIP. So that's the first movement. Line number 2, it's called Federal Relief Funds and Motor Vehicle Sales Tax, or MVEST. This is basically comprised of two different movements. First of all, the amendment will transfer $40 million of motor vehicle sales tax revenues from the Metro Transit bus operating budget to the Transit Capital Program. So you will see that $40 million of MVEST is coming from the operating. $28 million will go into the Metro Transit CIP, and then $12 million will go into the MTS, Metropolitan Transportation Services CIP. So we're making that movement. The offset to that will also then recognize $40 million in CRISA federal relief funds into the Metro Transit bus operating budget. If you recall, committee members, the council received just over $700 million of federal relief money in the form of CARES, CRISA, and ARP. This would then be transferring $40 million from the CRISA bucket into Metro Transit bus operations. This movement then will make Metro Transit bus operations whole. It will then transfer the MVEST over to the CIP for both MTS and Metro Transit. The next step down is the 5307 funds. Well, before I get down to that one, first of all, you'll see on the 5307 line number 3, MTS is getting in the $12 million worth of MVEST. They are then going to transfer $12 million worth of federal 5307 into the Metro Transit CIP. And then you'll see then on the Metro Transit bus operations, they have received the $10 million worth of, on CIP portion, $1 million of debt service, and $28 million of MVEST. So now that takes us down to the federal transfers. The first transfer you'll notice that we are transferring then $50 million of federal 5307 funds from the CIP project, or CIP, for Metro Transit over to the Southwest project, project number 61001. The second portion then is the recognition of which Nick had mentioned earlier of $30.5 million of Hennepin County funds. These are funds that are currently in the remaining balance in the Hennepin County grant that we are now going to recognize back into this project. So with that, then we will be bringing in $50 million worth of federal 5307 money into the Southwest project and $30 million of Hennepin County money into the Southwest project. It'll be an increase in that project of $80 million in 2022. In addition to that, Chair, there's also one other adjustment that we're also making, as you note in the narrative. We're also going to adjust the 2022 capital budget spending plan for the Southwest project. It was originally $384 million in 2022. We'll add the $80 million this evening. But then on top of that, we're increasing it approximately $180 million because basically due to the timing of the planned expenditures. That does not increase the scope of the project, but it's just timing of when construction is being completed. So that would then increase the spending plan for the project to $629 million in 2022. So with that, Chair and committee members, that explains the movement of the dollars. And I would, Chair and committee members, stand for any questions, or if you have any other questions on the process for Nick.
Great, thank you for the explanation and for the spreadsheet diagram. Maybe you want to keep that up too, in case anyone has questions on it. Are there any questions from committee members? Oh, Nick, did you have something?
Yeah, I just want to clarify one thing on this chart, that just so the Hennepin County grant, that is the grant we already have for the project. It's not a new grant or a grant for something else. It's Hennepin County's grant with the council for the Green Line extension. We're just recognizing the full value of the grant that we've both agreed to.
Great, thanks for that clarification. All right, are there questions from committee members at this point? I can't always see anybody. If there is anything, just jump in. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, Madam Chair, committee members, there's one thing I do want to add about the $50 million on the Southwest project. We're currently working right now with the FTA to try to determine whether or not that $50 million, if it can be a standalone grant, or if it has to be an amendment to the FFGA. So we're working with that, working with the FTA right now on that. So one of the things, the caveats I do want to make about the $50 million is the 5307 formula funds, they're contingent upon the subsequent execution of the FTA grant, and they're not available until that grant is executed. The Hennepin County funds, though, will be available once council approves it. They would be available immediately, but the $50 million, we have to come to an agreement on the approach with the FTA of how to bring the money in. Once that's done, the council will accept the grant, then the funds will be available.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Jim Alexander. I could add to that. Ed, we have late breaking news. So we did have a conversation with Region 5 this morning, and they have confirmed that they'll be handled through a grant.
A standalone 5307?
Yes, and it will not require the FFGA amendment.
Madam Chair, that is very good news.
Now that speeds things up quite a bit and
Yes, it
makes it
does.
a lot easier for us.
Thank you, Jim. Good news.
Great news. All right, just one question too on the when we moved the 40 million over out of MVest into Metro Transit CIP, we broke that into 28 and 12. Why was that again?
Madam Chair, committee members, very good question. So when we moved the $40 million, you can see we brought $28 million into Metro Transit, $12 million into Metropolitan Transportation Services. The reason we did that then was on the next line down, then we then substituted then $12 million of federal dollars out of MTS and brought that into the Metro Transit bucket. So the reason we brought the invest into MTS was to make sure that their capital program is whole.
All
so
right.
We're just substituting federal for MVest. They can still spend it, use their buy buses or whatever they choose to use the dollars for, but their program remains intact.
So what you're saying is the MTS CIP remains intact, or Metro Transit CIP? Okay. Because
Sure, it would be MTS. That's correct.
Okay, because there's 12 in, but then there's 12 out. So
yeah.
Okay.
So we're bringing 12 million. I apologize, Chair.
No, that's okay.
We're bringing $12 million of motor vehicle sales tax into MTS, and then we're then taking away $12 million of federal formula and transferring that to Metro Transit.
Got it. Okay, perfect.
It's a dollar for dollar exchange.
All right, perfect. This illustration is fantastic for people who, like me, are visual learners. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there, what else is that everything? I know we've got, a lot of, again, additional information that was given to all of us. Do you have more to present on this?
Madam Chair, that is it. We're just ready for questions.
Okay, great. Turn it over to the committee then. Are there any questions on this presentation? Comments? All right, seeing none then.
I have one, Madam Chair, if I can.
Oh, yes, Councilmember Gonzalez.
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering if we could get some more information of when we move funds from one program, when we move previously allocated funds from one program or from one service to the green line, what would be the impact on the um, on the first service or the first unit or the first program that is going to lose those funds? I'm thinking more on the motor tax income. Again, so is there going to be a program or a service that is going to be cut because those funds that perhaps were designated already now need to be sent somewhere else? I hope I'm trying to be clear here. Just want to see, what's the overall impact of moving monies around on all the different units or programs that we have.
Yeah, that's a great question. Who wants to take that, Nick or Ed?
Go ahead, Ed.
Okay, do you want to jump in, Nick? Go ahead.
Well, I could talk about it. So there will be actually no impact on any previously committed project. We're able to do this in this case because the forecast invest has come in higher than we had budgeted for. And then we are also anticipating higher federal funding into the region than we have allocated to projects. And so the funding that we're moving out of existing projects is being replaced so that we maintain all the commitments that we had in our capital budget and our operating budgets. And we're able to do that because of the very favorable forecast and the potential upcoming federal infrastructure bill being above what we had budgeted for.
And I see Mary's hand up. I think you might have more to add, Mary, so if you would.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. Just a reminder that when we look at our operating budget and we look out to future years, we still have a fiscal cliff in our operating budget, but it's pushed off to the 26-27 biennium. And the favorable forecasts allows it to stay out there, even with doing this change that we're doing. And so, but for that favorable forecast, we would have some impact either to our operations or to our capital program. But this allows us to prioritize those federal funds for their Southwest Light Rail.
Thank you for that. That's an important clarification. So there is an impact, but because numbers are coming in better than we anticipated, we can move money to an urgent need. There'll be some impact in the future to that fiscal cliff that we have, but it really supports what we've already adopted as a council to keep this project moving forward. Did that make sense, Councilmember Gonzalez? Because let me tell you, I got briefed ahead of this council meeting to make sure I understood how it was all going, and I think that was a really, really good question.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm assuming that this will be like a work in progress again, but just to keep an eye on that, just for transparency's sake, excuse me, so folks will know what's the impact on this reallocation of funds, if any, for other projects or other programs. So thank you.
And maybe I'm going to say something, and I hope I understand too, that by not doing this, there could be impacts on other projects potentially. So, Mary, I'll just look at you. Would that be a fair statement?
Madam Chair and committee members, yeah, absolutely, that's a fair statement. You know, it's in our interest and our desire, as well as the county's interest and desire, to complete this project. And so putting the funding towards this project at this time certainly looks at other, the federal government would look at other lines that we have moving forward, and keeping this project moving forward and completing it really sets us up well for those other projects, and it would be bad for those projects if we couldn't do this. So most certainly.
Thank you. And Ed, did you have something else you want to add?
Yes, Madam Chair, one of the other things I will also add is the fact that we had the ability to bring the transit debt service in and the motor vehicle sales tax into the capital program. by doing that, we had the ability then to make sure that the Metro Transit CIP and the planned purchases, bus procurements, et cetera, and MTS all stayed intact. So there was no detriment to the current existing Metro Transit or MTS CIP.
That's great. And I know that this was probably quite a feat to get this figured out so that we could, you know, keep moving forward on Southwest Transit. So the fact that everybody really understands to the minutia of how these funds work and what they can be allocated to, I think this is a really timely solution. And then also, just again, to anybody, Nick, Ed, or Mary, I think it's a fair statement too that, you know, at least in the near future, we're hoping that this is a solution for now and that maybe we won't have to be doing something like this in the future. Is that a fair statement or not?
Madam Chair and committee members, so as you are aware, as Nick presented earlier, that the Southwest project has a much larger funding gap than what we're asking you to fill here today. And we don't have all of the answers to that yet, and some of that is dependent on our funding partners or what the legislature might do. And so what I can say is, come the end of the legislative session, I think it'll be much clearer, the funding picture for and the funding sources for the Southwest project.
Yeah, that's important.
Again, I will reiterate that all parties, the state, Hennepin County, my council, are committed to getting this project done.
Right. Thank you for that. Are there any other comments, questions? And I don't know if I can see everybody, but if there's something, just go ahead and. All right, I am not seeing anything else on this item. So with that, I'll turn it back to committee members for a motion on the proposed action and a second. Is there a motion?
Moved by Councilmember Barber.
Moved by Barber. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second by Lee.
Seconded by Lee. Thank you, Councilmember Lee. Now, is there any additional discussion on this item? All right, then seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Lori?
Barber,
Aye.
Gonzalez, Gonzalez, Lee.
Aye.
Pacheco.
I think I saw an eye if I'm reading lips correctly.
Hi.
There he is.
Thank you, council member.
Okay.
And Johnson is an aye.
Gonzalez?
Oh,
I just wanted to double check because he was here before. All right, and Johnson, aye. Thank you.
aye. Sorry, I have some barky dogs right now. With that, thank you everybody for that important work and moving that forward. It'll go to transportation and then hopefully we're still then on track for March 23rd to the Met Council. With that, we'll now, you're welcome. Thank you. Oh, Ed, did you, anything else?
No, I just wanted to say thank you.
Great work. With that, we'll move on to item 2022-63, and that's award transit wastewater and wastewater refunding bonds within the established parameters. And we've got resolutions attached. And I guess I'll be turning this over to Mark Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, committee members. Mark Thompson, I'm the Senior Manager of Treasury for the Council. And as we do mostly annually, we're preparing to issue bonds to cash flow our projected capital project expenditures for the coming 12 months. And this business item 2022-63 requests council adoption of 3 different resolutions, which will authorize the council staff to issue 3 different bond series, provided that those bonds meet certain financial parameters that are established in each resolution. I should quickly mention maybe just clarification that this is not related to financing anything to do with the previous business item. This is separate. In fact, we're not allowed to issue bonds for light rail projects. So this is a total separate request. Specifically on April 19th, we're expecting and hoping to sell 3 different bond issues of $53.2 million, of tax-exempt GO bonds for transit projects, cash flow for transit projects. Secondly, 47.9 million of tax-exempt GOs for wastewater system. And we're also looking at a third issue of approximately 63.2 million of tax-exempt GOs that are refunding bonds, that will refund some outstanding wastewater bonds to save future interest costs. And so I'll kind of walk through that, each parameter with you, or each resolution with you. But the financial parameters that we put into for each bond series are put into the resolutions, and they're established in consultation with our municipal advisor and our bond counsel, looking at marketability and interest rate levels. As we structure these bond issues, we work to establish the parameters that'll make the sale successful, and also put some limits on there. The parameters limit the date of the bond sales, the amount and the pricing, the maximum interest rate, and also in the case of the refunding, it sets a minimum savings that we need to realize in order to sell the bonds. So individually, I'll kind of walk through each one with you, and they're listed on the business item. Resolution 2022-04 authorizes the general obligation transit bond in an amount not to exceed $55.5 million at a maximum interest rate of 3%. We put some cushion in there, as with all these. The current market rates are more like 2%, maybe give or take. As you know, we've got a lot of volatility in the markets right now, and rates are rising, and we're not selling these till April. So we put a little bit of cushion in these rates, but we're hoping that we'll sell them less than 3%, but we have to give ourselves a little cushion. So the proceeds of this bond series will cash flow approved transit capital project expenditures for approximately 12 months, and those will be repaid by property tax levy. In resolution 2022-05, that authorizes a general obligation wastewater revenue bond in an amount not to exceed $50.5 million at a maximum interest rate of 3.75. That's a little higher rate because this is a 20-year bond as opposed to the previous one, which was a 10-year bond. Again, we're hoping for it to come in quite a bit less than 375, but we're giving ourselves some cushion. The proceeds of this bond series will cash flow approved wastewater system capital project expenditures, again for approximately 12 months, and these bonds will be repaid with wastewater system revenues. Resolution 2022-06 authorizes the general obligation wastewater refunding bonds in an amount not to exceed $66 million, and we need to realize a savings of at least 2.9%. This refunding bond is going to refinance some outstanding 2012 bonds. Forecasting right now at the interest rates we're forecasting now, where we hope to save about 2.4 million in future interest costs over the remaining 6 years of that bond. So we're hoping that the market hangs on and we can issue these and get that savings. There's always a chance that markets, the interest rates spike in the next 45 days or so, or less than that. But this bond won't work. But we're gonna hope for success on this one. The results, these bond sales will be reported back to the management committee and the council in May, so after the sale date. And for the Thrive Lens analysis, these bond financings support stewardship, as the general obligation bonds are an efficient and low-cost funding source for capital project expenditures, and the refunding bonds will, of course, save future interest costs. So the proposed action is that the council adopt the 3 parameters resolutions, and which will authorize us to move forward with the issuance and sale and award of the bonds within the financial parameters, and also incur the related expenses and execute the necessary documents. So thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you, Mark. Are there questions or comments from the committee? Any comments or questions? Just one quick one, Mark, if you don't mind. On the refunding bonds, you said they were issued in 2012. Is there like a 10-year limit before we can start refunding? Or, why are we doing it now and we didn't do it earlier is my only question.
Yes, typically there's a call feature on most of the bonds we issue. So there's a first call date when we're allowed to call those. So this is the first time we're able to call that particular issue.
Got it.
Yep. So that's the reason we couldn't do it prior.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Seeing no other questions or comments, I'll turn it back to committee members and seek a motion to approve staff's recommendation. We've got, again, resolutions 2022-04, 2022-05, 2022-06. Again, authorizing the issuance, sale, and award of general obligation debt within established financial parameters, the incurrence of related expenses, related issuance expenses, and the execution of necessary documents to secure the funding. Is there a motion?
So moved by Gonzalez.
Moved by Gonzalez. Is there a second?
Second by Lee.
Seconded by Lee. Great. Any other further discussion on this item? Seeing none, then roll call, Lori, please.
Barber,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Lee, Chaco,
Aye.
Johnson.
And aye. And thank you for that hard work. Appreciate that report, and hopefully it all comes through and we'll see it back in May at the council.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item 3 under business. We've got Green Line Extension Venable Contract Amendment number 1, 2022-64. And I think I'm turning this over to Jim Alexander, our Southwest Light Rail Project Director, for the report.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Jim Alexander here. So we have an item to amend the Venable contract, looking to add 8.25 million to make a total contract value of 10.75. So a little background on this. Venable is involved, Ken Roberts specifically, he's the lead attorney from that company, to help us navigate the civil construction contract. And we had an item for the council back in January that looked to get authority to negotiate and execute a settlement agreement, and that's where Ken Roberts and Venable plays a key part. So back in July of 2020, we executed a contract for 2.5 million, and this was essentially, from technical detail, was to Schiff Harden at the time, and Ken Roberts and his group transferred over to Venable in January of 21, and so the contract currently carries with Venable. But this item is really to help us, this amendment is to help us continue with that settlement agreement. And once we get it signed, there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of coming to a full agreement with the contractor. As you may recall, for the council members, the settlement agreement, it sets a stage where we have a cap of 210 million authorization from the council. We hope to have it lower than that, but we will be working with the contractor to come to an agreement what that final value is. And that could go through a mediation process. And if that doesn't reach full conclusion, it could go through binding arbitration. And we look to see Mr. Roberts and his team help us navigate that, and also help us with the systems contract, where we'll have to be doing a similar agreement / change order to get their schedule up and running to the current configuration to get us to 2027, as we've been projecting for our revenue service for this project. So, Madam Chair, members, I'll leave it at that. Stand for any questions.
Thank you, Jim. Turn it back to the committee. Are there any questions or comments on this item? Anything? Councilmember Gonzalez.
Yeah, just a quick question. Is the range of similar legal services in is the range of legal services in similar projects about the same that we're gonna pay, or how does this compare with similar projects in the past? I guess that's my question.
Madam Chair, I might start this, maybe Dan Abelson or from the OGC here, is that, it really depends on what happens on the project, depends on what kind of legal action. On Central Corridor of the Green Line, we had some issues that we had to resolve with the University of Minnesota, NPR, and Hiawatha. The Blue Line had its own issues. It really depends on what is kind of confronting the particular project at the time. And for us, we've had a lot of legal, for Green Line Extension, we've had a lot of legal support for the freight rail agreements. Going back several years ago, we had essentially to reach agreements with 3 railroads, Twin City and Western, the Short Line, and CP and BNSF, the 2 primary freight companies, and also with Hennepin County Regional Rail Authority. So it really depends on the scope of what you're doing on these projects. We tend to be a little more complex on this, so we have a little more involvement on the legal front. But Dan, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Madam Chair, council member, the only thing I would add, is I think Jim's right that it's can vary a lot by project, but that this contract and this amendment, in addition to including the legal fees, also include sub-consultants who are doing extensive work to support us in this, both construction claims experts and forensic engineers. So that's another factor in the cost as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's helpful.
Great question. Thank you, Councilmember Gonzalez, and thank you for that response. Is there anything else from the committee members on this item? All right, then, seeing none, we've got the proposed action before us that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute a sole source amendment to the legal services contract with Venable LLC to support Metro Green Line Extension Project activities in an amount not to exceed $8.25 million with a total contract value of $10.7 million and extend the term of the contract through 2027. Do I have a motion to approve?
Moved by Barber.
Moved by Barber. Is there a second?
That's second by Gonzalez.
Seconded by Gonzalez. Is there any additional comments or questions? All right, then, seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Barber.
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Pacheco.
Aye.
Johnson.
And aye. Thank you very much for that presentation. That helps keep that project moving forward. So good work by everybody. Our last business item is number 2022-65. It's the update of the use of council property policy. And with this, I'll turn this over to Greg. I hope I say your last name, Greg Ewig, Director of Real Estate. If I didn't get that right, I apologize.
No, you got it perfect.
Great.
Madam Chair, members of the committee. Again, for the record, Greg Ewig, Director of Real Estate. Business item 2022-65, the use of council property policy, is part of a regular policy review and refresh and covers the use of council property by employees and third parties, think leases, licenses, and the like. The updated policy supports the Thrive stewardship outcome. And the policy was last updated in 1998, mostly focused on employee use of council property, but also mentioned general use by third parties. Just wanted to highlight a few revisions to this version. Notably, we've added some policy language around cancellation provisions for third-party use if it's inconsistent with funding covenants, if the use is unsafe, inappropriate, or illegal, or the use is contrary to the council's public mission. The policy update also formalizes a number of provisions, such as requirements to have agreements in writing, reimbursement for costs, among others. And the update also addresses a gap in policy related to queries about hunting or trapping on council property. Keep it short and sweet here, so I'll stand ready for any questions you may have and recommend the committee approve this updated policy and advance it to the council at its next meeting.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate that report. Are there any questions by council members? Any comments? All right, then, seeing none, we'll, again, the proposed action is the Metropolitan Council adopt RF 7-2 use of council property policy version 3. Do I have a motion?
So moved by Gonzalez.
Moved by Gonzalez. Is there a second?
Second by Lee.
Seconded by Lee. And is there any further discussion? Seeing none, then roll call vote, please.
Barber,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Pacheco, Johnson.
And aye. That is unanimous. That passes. So thank you very much for that update, especially since it hasn't been updated since 1999. And it was nice to be able to kind of track where some of those changes were and get that information. So I appreciated that. We'll move on now to the information portion of our agenda. And the first item we have up under information is the work plan. And I'll turn this over to George Gonzalez, our Deputy Regional Administrator.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. The next item is really information that we are able to provide. As you know, we should have a work plan every single year to kind of share with you and the committee, our plan and what we're doing with the work that is being done, either business items or items that we're working with the community. Obviously, just as a reminder, the purpose of obviously this committee is to provide accountability and oversight for financial and other resources that we use in the council. So hopefully you all have been able to look at the work plan, and I've worked with all the division directors and other managers on this plan for this year. So what we're going to do is, I've heard loud and clear from the members the council members that I've spoken with that, you want accountability, you want to be able to hear the story that we're doing and the work that is being done. In other words, outcomes of the work that is being done and the money where it's going and where it's happening with it. So as you will be able to review this work plan, we will have reporting and updates on a regular basis from items that are listed on this plan, all the way from business items, and that obviously the numbers will come later, to the Thrive work that is being done. So all of that's going to be reported, and we're just going to follow this plan. And if there needs to be changes or amendments to this plan, it should be easier to update and then provide that update for all of you guys.
Great. Thank you for putting it in this format too. I really appreciate that. So we can clearly see what the work items are and when they'll be conducted throughout the year. And thank you too for bringing regular updates to us on the work plan. I appreciate that very much. Does the committee, council members have any questions on the management committee's 2022 work plan? No questions? All right, well, we do not need to vote on this, so thank you very much, Mr. Gonzalez. It's a great feat to get this in front of us, and then again, I really appreciate getting updates and knowing where we're going with things and how we're tracking against all of our goals. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And last but not least, under information, the last item on our agenda is bringing back our Thrives initiatives ideas. And I'll turn this over to Marie Henderson, our Deputy Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. That's correct. I am Marie Henderson, the Deputy CFO. We just flip over one slide. Last management meeting, we went into details about each of these Thrive initiatives, and we have representatives on the line today to refresh or talk about any of those. We did go back. There was that recommendation for safety initiatives, and you will see that it is not on this list. We did have meetings with Metro Transit and Judd. Right now, we're not viewing the safety initiative as a financial issue, but more of a policy issue. And that policy is being addressed this year in the mix up at legislation. And we continue to pursue those administrative citation authority for fair non-payment. But we will be funding personnel who will likely be assigned to writing the citations if we get the law changed from existing operating funds for the next few years. And that is thanks to the federal COVID relief funds. I also will let you know that in 2020, we did have $500,000 for Metro Transit safety in the budget, where we used that to increase livability teams centralized on our busiest transit centers. So we're leaving the list like this, but absolutely would like open for discussion. And the next steps after this would have a formal business amendment into our budget so that spending could continue. So with that, I will pause and open it up.
Thank you, Marie. Appreciate this report. And just again, noting that on the initial presentation that we received, it was up to 3.2, so we're going to the max, I think, if I recall correctly, of the amounts of money that are available. And I did maybe just want to note too, I appreciate the update about why safety wasn't on this. You know, I get that we've got our standing initiatives to get the administrative fines with the legislature, and that we've gotten past funding to do additional personnel. I didn't serve on the task force, so I've just been receiving that as a council member, but I just thought, gee, if there was some money to be able to put towards that. But I see Councilmember Lilligren's hand is up, and he's the one who brought forward safety at the last meeting that we had on this. So Councilmember Lilligren, did you want to speak to any of the items or that in particular?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. And I want to thank Marie for the follow-up, and I'm supportive of this list, of course, and just to note that the work of the Transit Police Work Group goes beyond just the administrative affairs. I mean, there is sort of an audit and things like that that will take some resources, apparently, and we might be just a little in advance of being able to actually identify what that amount might be. And just as a council member who serves on that work group and here, I just thought if there was this lovely convergence of available funds and the new direction that's going to come forward from the work group and the council, perhaps we could leverage that moment. But I'm satisfied, and I appreciate the follow-up. Thanks, Marie.
Thank you, Councilmember Lilligren. Go ahead.
Madam Chair and Councilmember Lilligren, I'd like to also add, we have the opportunity as we are starting the 2023 budget that we will have general purpose levy available. I can't tell you how much, depends on the implicit rate factor, but we will be able to revisit this one-time money again very shortly.
Yep, thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, appreciate that. And I do think, again, as some of the recommendations continue to move forward from the transit safety work group, it would be nice to see if there can be some money that goes into some of those other things other than the things we've already been working on for quite some time. They're important too, but wanting to make sure that that is funded appropriately so we can see the results that we're looking for. Are there any other questions on this item? Comments? And again, Marie, when will this come back to us for final approval and amendment into the budget?
That's correct, Madam Chair. This will come the March 23rd meeting into the budget amendment, which will have multiple items, and we will have this in there so that the spending can start.
Okay, great. Right, anything else on this item? All right, seeing none then, thank you for that report. Really appreciate the work on this by everybody who's involved. It's a lot of lift to bring these items forward, and appreciate the thorough reports everybody gave us. So we'll look at for this when it comes back to us on the 23rd. So with that, I see no other business to come before this committee, and we're doing pretty good. It's ahead of 3 o'clock. So give you some time back in your day, see council members back at 4 o'clock, and without objection, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Have a good one.